Establishment, we're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GBNews,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hello and welcome to The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. The Conservative MP, Caroline Note, says menopausal women are being forced out of the workplace. We will chat to her. Kevin Maguire and Andrew Pearce, our favourite dynamic duo, will join us with their political highlights of the week. And the King of the North, Andy Burnham, will be here with us live. All that after the news.
Gloria, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 12 o'clock. I'm Olivia Guthrie in the GB newsroom. Legal history has been made as the sentencing in a criminal trial was shown live on television today for the very first time. Judge Sarah Munro QC's comments were broadcast from the Old Bailey in a manslaughter case. This was the sentence she handed to Ben Oliver after he pleaded guilty to killing his grandfather in South London.
The sentence I pass upon you is therefore one of life imprisonment with a minimum term of 10 years and 8 months. From that term will be deducted the term you have spent on remand, which is 553 days. That deduction results in a term of 9 years and 63 days.
Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss are going head-to-head in Leeds tonight for the first round of 12 Tory hustings. Tax and spending are expected to be the big battlegrounds as the leadership candidates tour the country, hoping to secure party members' votes. The ballot to decide who gets the keys to number 10 closes on September the 2nd. Speaking in Leeds, Foreign Secretary Liz Truss says it's not the time for another windfall tax to help with the cost of living.
I understand that families are really struggling at this time. We've seen a rise in global energy prices. That's why I would reverse the national insurance increase, putting more money back into people's pockets, but also have a temporary moratorium on the green levy to cut people's energy bills. But what we also need to do is making sure we produce more domestically produced gas so that we are able to increase supply and keep prices as low as possible.
Liz Truss. Well, speaking in Birmingham ahead of the Commonwealth Games, Boris Johnson says that whoever will take his place will continue to level up the country.
We come now to the next stage in the great relay race of politics. I didn't think it was meant to be a relay race, by the way, when I started it. They seem to have changed the rules halfway through, but never mind. Never mind. The baton. I can assure you that the baton is going to be passed seamlessly and invisibly to the hand of somebody else.
Well, the 22nd Commonwealth Games will start tonight in Birmingham. The opening ceremony, which begins at 8 p.m. at the Alexander Stadium, will be attended by the Prince of Wales. Tom Daley is among those carrying the Queen's baton to kick off the Games. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer is also there for the Games today amid an ongoing row in his party over the sacking of a frontbencher. Shadow Transport Minister Sam Tarry was fired after defying Sir Keir's ban on joining the picket line with striking rail workers. Train services are still disrupted today after yesterday's strike caused travel chaos. Unions have announced a further strike this Saturday and on August the 13th. Britain's electricity system operator is warning supply might be tight this winter. Its forecasting capacity may narrow significantly towards the end of the year, but it believes it should be able to keep the lights on. The ESO says that 4 coal power stations are ready to go if they're needed. Economics expert Vicky Price says the war in Ukraine has had an effect on energy supply and prices.
Russia cutting supplies to Europe and how it will affect us. Now, the question is, of course, whether we can rely on other sources of gas. We get it from Norway, mostly, the extra gas that we need, plus, of course, whatever we can do in terms of renewable energy that can be used more in the homes. But there is a limit to do that. And, of course, as we know, we still depend hugely on gas, I'm afraid, in terms of heating homes. And that's going to be the real problem.
Kim Jong-un claims North Korea has a nuclear deterrent. In a speech, the North Korean leader accused the US of conspiring with South Korea to commit subversive acts and demonise his country. He went on to criticise new South Korean Prime Minister Yoon Suk-yeol, calling his administration belligerent and treacherous. The actor Bernard Cribbins has died, aged 93. Famous for narrating The Wombles and starring in The Railway Children, Doctor Who and the Carry On films, his career spanned 7 decades. This is GB News. We'll have more as it happens. Now it's back to Gloria.
Coming up this hour on The Briefing, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak are battling to be our next Prime Minister, and MPs are bitterly divided between them. Things aren't any better in the Labour Party, with the Shadow Transport Minister having been sacked last night. We'll have Kevin Maguire and Andrew Pearce on the show later this hour. Also, Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, joins me to discuss Northern Transport. Liz Truss is making big pledges, but Northerners have heard it all before. Will things really improve? And as energy bills are forecast to hit a horrifying £4,000 this winter, our economics editor will tell us what's going on and what help the government needs to give. And the chair of the Women and Equality Select Committee, Caroline Noakes, tells me why menopausal women need better support at work. And please get in touch for anything on today's show. Email me, gbnews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me at GBNews. Well, it already feels like the Conservative leadership race has been going on forever. But today, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak face each other in the first Conservative Party members' debate. Our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, joins me now. So, this evening in Leeds, what can we expect?
Yes, it might seem like there have been so many other debates so far. In fact, 4 different, 2 head-to-heads, 2 wider debates. Those were televised things. This is the first hustings organised by the Conservative Party themselves. Everything else has been done by broadcasters. So the Conservative Party is hosting 1 hustings in every region of the United Kingdom. So that's 12 hustings in total, starting today and going right through till the end of August. So the first one here today in Leeds, which of course is where Liz Truss grew up. Might that give her a home advantage? Well, potentially, but also these are events for Conservative Party members. So it will be Conservative Party members who are going there. They pay a small fee to attend these hustings. Anyone who is a member of the Conservative Party can apply to go in their own region. And they will be going along and listening to what Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss have to say. The one interesting thing, however, is this is the first time that Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak have gone head-to-head since Rishi Sunak's U-turn on VAT. Since he's proposed that tax cut that before he said would be wrong and would be inequitable, it might be interesting to see what Liz Truss has to say about that.
Yes, and I've noticed that Rishi Sunak's come back on that and said, well, she's U-turned on things like the monarchy and Brexit. Liz Truss has actually been speaking this morning. Let's have a look at that.
I understand that families are really struggling at this time. We've seen a rise in global energy prices. That's why I would reverse the national insurance increase, putting more money back into people's pockets, but also have a temporary moratorium on the green levy to cut people's energy bills. But what we also need to do is making sure we produce more domestically produced gas so that we are able to increase supply and keep prices as low as possible. And that's really important as we head to net zero, that we're using gas for our transition. It isn't time for a windfall tax. What I believe is we need to keep taxes low to attract investment into industries. We're just here at City Fibre in Leeds, we're hearing about how we need to turbocharge investment into the north of England, bringing more businesses and opportunities. And the best way to do that is to keep taxes low, to attract that investment into our great towns and cities, and that's what I'm focused on. Well, the taxes that I am cutting are affordable within our budget. But what I am setting out is a plan for economic growth. The fact is we've had too low growth now for decades, and by creating new low tax investment zones in places like West Yorkshire, by enabling the post-Brexit reforms to take place, unleashing more investment from the city, we will grow the economy faster. That will bring in more tax revenues, and that will enable us to afford those projects. But I also think that the funding formula has been unfair on places like Leeds and places like Yorkshire. So I will fix the Treasury funding formula to make sure that this part of the country is getting a fairer share of government resources, because frankly, transport is much better in London and the South East than it is here in Leeds, and I will fix that.
So Liz Truss is currently the favourite. Is she unstoppable?
Well, at the moment, it does sort of look that way. And if you look at betting markets, it's extraordinary. Over 80% probability for Liz Truss, under 20% probability for Rishi Sunak. That's where people are putting their money physically now. Now, people have bet wrong in the past, but it does give a sense of inevitability here around this campaign. Of course, Liz Truss sustaining at the last poll a 24-point lead ahead of Rishi Sunak. And that was before some of his less well-received debate performances, and indeed before his U-turn on the issue of tax, on that one specific tax on VAT. And so it does look like Rishi Sunak does need something big. If he's going to turn this around and ballots land on the doormats of Conservative Party members from the start of next week, and we know that Conservative Party members are likely to vote pretty much as soon as they get their ballots. People aren't going to be sitting on these for weeks and weeks and weeks before they finally send them off. Rishi Sunak has really a matter of days to make a big splash to turn things around. And it's looking like he's getting fewer and fewer opportunities to do just that.
And Rishi Sunak was the favourite amongst MPs. Charles Walker, senior Conservative MP, he made an interesting intervention yesterday in this debate, saying that actually it should be Conservative MPs that determine these things, not Conservative Party members. Is he a lone voice on this?
He does seem to be a bit of a lone voice in this, because every time that the Conservative Party has chosen a Prime Minister, and it's happened, well, now 3 times in the last decade, there have been these criticisms of the process, that it goes out to the membership, and the Conservative Party membership are not the same, don't behave the same as the country at large, as you'd expect. And before 2001, the system was that Conservative MPs would choose their leader and thereby the Prime Minister if they're in government. That was the system from 1975 through to 2001. William Hague changed it after 1997 because it was seen to be not involving the membership, because it was seen to be elite and private and mysterious and duplicitous. One of the things that's said about Conservative MPs is they're potentially the most sophisticated electorate in the world, potentially the most duplicitous electorate in the world. So the idea with this sort of rounds and then a threshold and then a final 2 to give to the membership, it gives the membership a voice, not in the same way that the Labour Party have a voice. You get to choose between a much wider array, but it means the Conservative Party MPs can have that safety valve, not produce a Corbyn-like sensation whereby someone has no support within the parliamentary party, get to those final 2 positions and then the membership votes. That's the compromise that was arrived at in 2001. And I don't think there's much appetite within the exec of the 22 committee to change it right now.
Yes, I do remember with some dread being that MP when some of my colleagues decided just to put Jeremy Corbyn
Just
on
to
the ballot
broaden
page.
the debate.
Just to broaden that debate. And the rest is history. But let's talk about the Labour Party now. I think we've discussed how the Labour Party are going to get a hearing during this Conservative leadership contest.
Yeah.
They have managed to.
They have managed to do so by spectacularly shooting themselves in the foot. I suppose there are two ways to look at this. Number one, Keir Starmer wants to look like a government in waiting. He wants to look like someone who is taking grown-up, sensible decisions, and to that end, he has said that his shadow ministers should not attend the picket line of any rail strike over the coming days and weeks. And he said that because a government wouldn't do that thing, they need to behave as if they're a government in opposition. However, one of his shadow ministers, Sam Tarry, did precisely the opposite of that. He didn't just attend a picket line, but he also made quite a big song and dance about it, appearing on many different TV channels, giving a lot of interviews and allegedly making policy up on the hoof as well. Now, the Labour Party leadership say that, and of course he's been now sacked from the front bench, the Labour Party leadership say that he's been sacked because of the interviews rather than because of attending a picket line. But it really does smack of factional war here. Sam Tarry seems to be on the left of the party, facing a deselection battle in his Ilford seat. And Sir Keir Starmer wanting, in many ways, probably wanting to have this row. To make him seem more moderate and really take on the hard left. It's unedifying, though, whenever this happens. Sir Keir Starmer got elected as Labour Party leader, saying he wanted to stop the interfactional warfare, saying that he wanted to unite the Labour Party. It looks like this week he's doing the opposite.
Tom Howard, as ever, thank you. Now, energy bills could hit £500 a month in January as Russia squeezes European gas supplies with a prediction of an annual price cap of £3,850, far exceeding already gloomy predictions for rising bills made earlier this year. The Culture Secretary, Nadine Dorries, spoke to GBNews this morning and was questioned on this and on her support for Tory leadership candidate Liz Truss. Let's take a look.
Those people who are both vulnerable and from poorer backgrounds will have seen £1,200 in their bank account. So we are helping people right now. That's part of the government's response and the government's measures to helping people face the cost of living, a challenge which is actually a global challenge in every country of the world right now. So we have put money into people's bank accounts to help them deal with those bills which will be arriving on their doormats. What I will say is that the government is taking both a very serious and very coordinated approach to what we know is a serious problem as a result of what's happened in Ukraine, as a result of Putin's barbaric invasion. The government this is the top of the government's inbox list of priorities. We've put in measures in place. People have experienced that money, £1,200 for many people, into their bank accounts to help them deal with that problem right now. That is what the government's doing, and as the problem continues, then it's an issue we will continue to address. I can't tell you what policies are going to be put in place in the future. We've got a leadership competition taking place. We'll have a new Prime Minister on September the 5th. It was agreed that there will be no new policy announcements between now and then. And on September the 5th, this, I'm sure, will be the first problem to face a new Prime Minister and one that will have to be addressed. And I think what we need on September the 5th is somebody who has fresh, invigorating, stimulating ideas and an approach to the economy. I think that's what Liz is offering. She's not somebody who buys into the Treasury orthodoxy. She's someone who thinks economically outside the box. She understands the value of putting money into people's pockets, and you achieve that. One of the ways to achieve that is with those groups of people who work hard and are taxed hard, that the best way to stimulate the economy is to put money back into their pockets. She understands that raising corporation tax to 25% is not the way you encourage investment or innovation or reward those entrepreneurs who create wealth and create jobs. Liz gets all that, and that's one of the reasons why, for me, she's the person I want to see win on September the 5th.
And that was Nadine Dorries speaking to GB News Breakfast this morning. While the Tory leadership hustings in Leeds have focused minds on levelling up the north, I'll talk to Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham later in this hour. Up next, though, it's the Kevin Maguire, Andrew Pearce double act. Back in a minute.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest forecast. Often cloudy across much of the UK through Thursday. There is the risk of some heavy showers, particularly across Dumfries and Galloway, but on the warm side. Looking at the pressure pattern, high pressure still dominates the weather across the UK, giving largely settled conditions. Wide isobars there indicating light winds too. However, there is quite a lot of cloud trapped underneath this high pressure, so fairly grey skies across the UK. The risk of a few showers across western areas, some heavy showers possible across eastern parts of Northern Ireland, the Borders region, Dumfries and Galloway, so perhaps 15-20 mils of rain falling in short periods of time. So it's worth keeping an eye on the forecast and the heavy showers here. Temperature-wise, generally high teens to low 20s, 24 or 25 across the southeast. Through Thursday evening, a lot of cloud across the UK, still some heavy downpours across northern parts of England, southern parts of Scotland into the early hours. Perhaps clouds stretching a little bit further south into the Pennines, 1 or 2 splashes of rain, but generally elsewhere dry. And temperature-wise, generally at the mid to low teens. So overall, still another fairly mild night. So a warm start to Friday morning. More in the way of sunshine, though, across southern parts of England and Wales. The cloud bubbling up as the day goes on. Still fairly cloudy down the spine of the country. The risk of some rain at first, but this petering out later. 1 or 2 showers developing by the afternoon, but plenty of sunny spells around and lots of places staying dry. Temperatures reaching 26 or 27 towards the southeast, which is 81 in Fahrenheit. So feeling quite warm in that sunshine. Through the evening time, a change slowly on the way, cloud and outbreaks of rain starting to move into Northern Ireland, western Scotland. Elsewhere, generally dry to end Friday, just 1 or 2 light showers are possible. And then that change continues into the weekend, showery outbreaks of rain across the north and the west in particular, some rain in the southeast too, but temperatures generally still above average.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
So we've all been talking so much about the Tory leadership race. It's been hard to notice that there's civil war brewing within the Labour Party too. I'm joined by my favourite panel, Kevin Maguire and Andrew Pearce. There they are in their loveliness. Kevin, I'm going to start with you. We were pondering how Labour were going to get noticed during this Conservative leadership contest. They have found a way. Keir Starmer sacked the frontbencher, Sam Tarry, citing collective responsibility, a government in waiting, seeking to resolve disputes, can't be on a picket line. He had no choice but to fire him, did he, Kevin?
Yeah, I remember, Gloria, I said when the blue-on-blue attacks and Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss are going to tear each other apart, that Labour was best staying out of it and saying nothing. But you're quite right, they've come into it for all the wrong reasons. It's been a week of chaos and confusion, splits, recriminations, and he backed himself into a position, Keir Starmer, where I can see where you're coming from, saying he had no choice to sack Sam Tarry, who himself was undoubtedly provocative. But what a place to get into when you should be able to allow figures to turn up and express solidarity with people who are fighting to save their jobs, public services, and protect their living standards. I think Starmer's just got on the wrong side of this argument. And if he wants to beat Tony Blair in 1997, he can try as much as he likes, but the circumstances are very, very different now. To say strike, it's not a dirty word anymore. There's a lot of admiration for rail workers and others who are standing up because so many families are finding the real pinch. They're criticising the government for not doing enough, and they admire people who will take that stand. So I think he's bringing a world of pain down on himself now, Keir Starmer. I think he's made a big mistake.
Interesting. Andrew, what do you make of that? If the Labour Party, if a Labour leader had gone with a sort of solidarity with the workers line, do you think that could have paid off for the Labour Party?
It's always a difficult one, Gloria. I think what he should do, actually, is go with his heart and go with his instinct, as opposed to going with what Tony Blair or Peter Manson told him, because that's the worry about this. What does Keir Starmer really think about this rail dispute? Is he on the side of the workers? Does he genuinely feel that the £59,000 a year that the ASLEF drivers are being paid isn't enough? I know a lot of the rail workers involved in this dispute are paid considerably less than that. But it's a classic case here, Gloria, of the Labour leader, the emperor with no clothes. He's got no view, yet again. He's got no proper value position here. Nothing's coming from the heart. It's all about how does he think this is going to play with the so-called voters of Middle England. And he's got the worst of all worlds here. He's upset dozens of Labour MPs, and I would argue tens of thousands of Labour members and hundreds of thousands of trade unionists, because, as Kevin says, if a Labour MP can't follow his conscience and go on a picket line, bearing in mind he is associated with one of the rail unions, what's the point of being a Labour MP?
I think that we saw a rare moment of consensus between you two. Let's try and stop that right now.
Well, can I just say, I wouldn't be on a picket line with a rail, and I think the strike is unjustified, and I think it's unacceptable. And I think if they were so convinced that the employers had made such a bad offer, they could have put it to the employees, but they didn't dare. And we know that the guy at the head of the RMT has already said this is a fight between the unions and the Tory government. He wants a political fight. He's spoiling for a political fight because he knows that Keir Starmer's not up to a political fight.
No, he says it's a fight with the Tory government because the government controls the purse strings of the rail companies. They're publicly financed but privately run. That's why it is a fight with the Tory government. And Keir Starmer's position, I believe, should have been to, of course, regret the inconvenience to the travelling public, but point out that the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, who is the thin controller in this dispute, is refusing to meet the workers and their representatives. He's refusing to try and facilitate an agreement, and he's expecting them to swallow big cuts in living standards when wages are, on average, across the economy, wages are rising only 1/23 of fuel bills. There's a message out there. It's called the Labour Party. It's about Labour. It's about working people, whether you're low paid, middle paid, or well paid. That's what it is all about. And if you can't represent working people, those who are doing the jobs, then what is the point of the Labour Party? He's got himself into a terrible position here. And of course, he says, well, Sam Tarry, the former Shadow Transport Minister, is sacked because he made up policy on the hoof where he said rail workers should get inflation matching increases. Well, the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, earlier in the week, dropped all privatisations, including rail, and then she was contradicted by Keir Starmer, who had to give an interview to say, no, we're still going to bring rail back into public ownership. There are no sanctions against her. So there's no consistency in how he is handling his shadow ministers.
All right, let's talk about the Conservative Party now.
Can I just ask one thing?
Oh, go on, Andrew. Of course you can.
I'm fascinated to know the position and the view of the Deputy Labour leader in all of this, Angela Rayner, because she hasn't said anything. We know just a few days ago she was supporting the right of people to go on picket lines and to withdraw Labour. And of course, she is stepping out, if that's a suitably old-fashioned expression. Sam Tarry is her partner. So what does she think? Is she relishing all this? Because this is a huge amount of political trouble for Keir Starmer, the leader. We know how ambitious she is. We know a lot of Labour members think she'd be doing a lot better job. And at least if she was leader, we would know her view on whether this rail strike was right or not. And we don't know what Starmer thinks about so many other things, Gloria.
Yes, and I enjoyed reading the Mail front page on that particular. We've got to talk about the Conservative Party.
Is not helping.
Right. Andrew Pearce, Liz Truss.
Yeah.
Is she unstoppable? Is she basically got the keys to number 10?
I tell you why I think that's the case, Gloria, because I think it was a jaw-dropping moment when Rishi Sunak decided, after all these weeks and months of saying you cannot remove VAT from fuel bills, it was a screeching U-turn yesterday, and I think it's a sign he knows the polls are showing Tory members are deserting him in even bigger droves. I think that TV debate on Monday, the first one, on the BBC, did him no favours at all. Whether he was mansplaining, he was hectoring, he talked over her. I think she performed a lot better than most people thought. I know Kevin thinks she's more wooden than the Forest of Dean, and she is pretty wooden, let's be honest. But she performed better than she has done. And I think the fact that he felt he had to do that extraordinary change of heart on tax, when his whole pitch has been in this election, I'm the sensible one. She's got fairy tale economics. We can't cut taxes yet. When he announced that huge change, I think that's because he knows he's in serious trouble. And I think she's home and dry, bar the shouting.
Kevin, is there a danger that the Labour Party, and we've chatted about this before, are actually underestimating Liz Truss? She's made mincemeat of Rishi Sunak. She could do the same to Keir Starmer.
Possibly, but I don't think it's probable that Labour for Liz. They really believe she is beatable because she's not very good is the truth, and she'll be found out very quickly as Prime Minister. She won't be able to keep all her promises, whether it's £30 billion of tax cuts or now £24 billion for Northern Rail or whatever else she comes up with. So yeah, they mustn't treat her lightly. That would be a big mistake. But she's relatively unknown, and I think that's probably to our advantage now, because the better known she is, I think the fewer people will support her. To some extent, she's going to be a puppet of the Brextremists in our own party, the European Research Group, who expect to pull her strings because she was a Remainer in 2016, just as she was a Liberal Democrat. She'll say or do anything to win, but once you're in office, there will be just broken promise after broken promise.
Right, we've only got about a minute and a half left, but I don't know why. When I was writing the questions this morning, there was something that I really wanted to ask you both. Andrew, cost of living.
Yeah.
The 99p McDonald's cheeseburger has gone up to £1.19. I just felt like, I was just wondering this morning, while I was having a shower, are these two gentlemen the light of my week? Do they go to McDonald's? Will they be affected by that cheeseburger hike?
I won't be, but as you can see from Kevin, he eats a lot of burgers. As you can see from me, I simply don't, nor chips. So if I did go to McDonald's, I'd have the healthy option. Kevin doesn't. But I'm very sorry they've gone up, but that can only be good for the nation's waistline. Kevin, take note.
Gloria, I only go when I've got a hangover, and it's not as often as Andrew would make you suggest. But I have noticed the price of fish and chips and chicken kebabs, which I'm more likely to buy, actually going up, I will admit. Now, food prices going up after fuel, whether it's filling up your car or gas, electricity. They're the two pinch points I've noticed.
Well, thank you both for settling my wonders in the shower this morning. Kevin, hope you get a chicken kebab soon. And Andrew, I'm very pleased to hear about your waistline. You take care.
Lovely to
Thank
see
you. As ever.
Bye.
Andrew Pearce and Kevin Maguire, aren't they great? Well, our energy bills have already rocketed, and now it's forecast that they'll hit an average of £4,000. Our economics editor will join us next. And as Liz Truss promises to build Northern Powerhouse Rail if she becomes Prime Minister, our last Manchester Mayor, Andy Burnham, if we can believe it. First, it's your news with Olivia.
Gloria, thank you. It's just coming up to 12:33. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. Judge Sarah Monroe QC has made legal history in the first ever broadcasting of a criminal trial sentencing. Her comments were publicly screened from the Old Bailey in a manslaughter case. She sentenced Ben Oliver to life in prison with a minimum of 10 years after he pleaded guilty to killing his grandfather in South London. The parents of Archie Battersby are taking their case to continue his life support to the Supreme Court. The 12-year-old boy was left in a comatose state after suffering brain damage. Holly Dance and Paul Battersby want the court to allow them to make an application to the United Nations against a ruling that doctors be allowed to withdraw Archie's treatment. Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss are going head-to-head in Leeds tonight in the first round of 12 Tory hustings. Tax and spending are expected to be the big battlegrounds as the leadership candidates tour the country, hoping to secure party members' votes. The ballot to decide who gets the keys to number 10 closes on September the 2nd. The 22nd Commonwealth Games will start in Birmingham tonight. The opening ceremony, which begins at 8 p.m. at the Alexander Stadium, will be attended by the Prince of Wales. Tom Daley is among those carrying the Queen's baton to kick off the Games. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Gloria after a short break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Well, we're all worried about rising prices, aren't we? Now, energy bills, which have already risen massively, are forecast to hit an average of £4,000 this winter, £500 next January alone. Meanwhile, Centrica, the company who owns British Gas, has announced soaring profits and is paying dividends to shareholders again. Here to explain exactly what's going on is our economics editor, Liam Halligan. Liam, lots of figures being bandied around. How high could our energy bills go?
Well, this Ofgem energy price cap, Ofgem is the energy regulator, it sets the cap for the average UK household annual utility bill, electricity, gas, heat and so on. This time last year, that cap was like £1,200 across the year. It's now heading for £3,000 this autumn in October when the cap is reset, £300,000. £3,000 at least, because it's based on wholesale energy prices on global markets that the energy companies buy the energy at, and then they sell it on to us. But there are industry estimates coming out now, looking at geopolitical tensions, looking at the fact that there's no respite in this Russia-Ukraine conflict, understanding that the Kremlin is willing to use gas as a weapon. Yesterday only, gas supplies restricted to 20% of normal levels between Russia and Germany, the Eurozone's biggest economy. So respected industry analysts, they're not alarmist people. These are people of massive expertise whose entire professional reputation and business is based on their forecast, saying that we could see that Ofgem energy price cap when it's reset in January 2023 close to or even above £4,000 a year. And because energy bills tend to be seasonal, that means in January alone we could see 500 quid for the average UK household. Now, that isn't a certainty, but it definitely could happen. And I don't think, Gloria, I mean, I congratulate you covering this. We've been covering it a lot on GB News. I don't think, as a whole, our political and media class have really yet grasped the extent of the energy crisis that we're facing.
And this morning, when I was on my way to work, I saw the breaking news about Centrica, the company that owns British Gas, about their profits rising fivefold. And I mean, I shouldn't have had blood pressure at that level at that time of the morning. I tell you, how can that be right?
OK, so Centrica is the company, it's the holding company, the much bigger conglomerate that owns British Gas. Centrica is an oil and gas conglomerate. It has big stakes in the North Sea. It has stakes in the Norwegian Sea. So Centrica as a whole has made money because wholesale energy prices, which it doesn't control, have gone soaring upwards. But the cost of extracting that oil and gas, if you like, and energy hasn't gone up that much. It's gone up a bit because all energy, you know, the fuel that you need, the energy that you need to extract the energy, the price of that's gone up. But that's led to huge increases in margins. Their half-year profits were £1.3 billion, as you say, 5 years, 5 times higher than the first half of last year, Gloria. But British Gas, which is the customer-facing part of Centrica, they're buying the wholesale gas and then selling it on, and they're still making a profit, but their profits have actually fallen by just over 40% to £98 million. So, you know, remember that lots of customer-facing energy companies, like Bulb, for instance, they've gone bust because the wholesale prices they're absorbing, they can't pass them on because of the Ofgem energy price cap. That's why if we want to avoid our energy providers, as opposed to our, you know, the people that actually drill the energy, like Shell, their profits also up enormously. But the customer-facing energy providers, their profits are being squeezed to the point where dozens of them are now going into bankruptcy, and those customers have to be taken on by other retail energy companies. It is a tremendously complex situation. But do bear in mind, remember when you and I presented the budget, Rishi Sunak's last budget, back in, my God, that seems a long time ago, last spring.
When Boris Johnson was Prime Minister in the olden days.
When we were young. A week is a long time in politics. Crikey, 10 minutes is a long time in politics these days. But the centrepiece of that budget was that windfall tax. Yeah. That windfall tax, you and I were discussing it. We checked it in the newsroom, didn't we? It is now law, and that will be coming in. So that will be curtailing some of the profitability of that Centrica arm of the company, Shell, and so on. But guess what? Because Rishi Sunak has given these huge energy companies all these investment incentives, a lot of that windfall tax will be offset by the incentives they get for more explorations. It's a really complex situation, but the main message from me, the government needs to do a lot more to help ordinary people this autumn and winter.
Liam, yeah, they will have to do a lot more, and we'll bring you details of that on GB News. And, of course, Liam will be back at 1 with On the Money. Catch him here on GB News. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has been speaking to broadcasters following his decision to sack his shadow Transport Minister, Sam Tarry. He was asked why he decided he was asked why he decided to do so after Mr Tarry joined rail strike picket lines yesterday.
Sam Tarry was sacked because he booked himself onto media programmes without permission and then made up policy on the hoof. And that can't be tolerated in any organisation because we've got collective responsibility. So that was relatively straightforward. Of course, so far as the industrial action is concerned, I completely understand the frustration of so many working people who've seen the prices go up, seen inflation through the roof, and their wages haven't gone up. So the Labour Party will always be on the side of working people, but we need collective responsibility, as any organisation does.
Well, you mentioned collective responsibility. When Conservative cabinet ministers assume collective responsibility to defend Partygate and things like that, your supporters accuse them of being spineless. Shouldn't Sam Tarry be allowed to stick up for his principles?
I think in any organisation, certainly any political party, everybody understands that if you're on the front bench, you can't book yourself onto media programmes without permission, and you can't make up policy on the hoof. I think that's very straightforward in political parties. I think that's pretty straightforward for any organisation or any business. And so we've got collective responsibility, and that's what that's about. Obviously, the Labour Party's relationship with the trade unions is historic. They're part of our movement. They always have been, always will be. And that's why we've worked with them on things like employment rights for day one, the most comprehensive set of rights that we set out at our conference last year. So this is about collective responsibility. I think everybody understands that.
The Labour leader, Keir Starmer, speaking to broadcasters this morning. Legal history has been made this morning as the sentencing of a manslaughter case took place live on TV for the first time ever. It's the case of 25-year-old Ben Oliver, who pleaded guilty to killing his grandfather in South London last year. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, is with us. Tell us the details, Mark.
Well, this was a really perfect example, if ever there was one, of the complex nature of the decisions that judges have to reach in passing sentence. It's the first time, a historic occasion, of course, that cameras have been allowed into the Crown Court here in England and Wales to see that sentencing process. What it was not was the Americanisation of the trial process that we've seen, of course, on the other side of the Atlantic, where whole trials are televised and often sensationalised, and there was no way that the judiciary in this country, many in the legal profession, victims advocates and alike, would accept that. But what they have allowed in the interest of open justice, so that people can get a better insight into the trial process, and particularly the complex decisions that a judge has to reach before passing sentence, is to allow those sentencing remarks to be broadcast. And they were broadcast in a restricted manner, in the sense that we got a single camera on the judge who was delivering those sentencing remarks, Sarah Munro QC. At the end of this trial process, a young man, 25 years of age, by the name of Ben Oliver. He murdered his grandfather, David Oliver, in January of last year, a horrific crime in which he cut the old man's throat and stabbed him around the face and in the eyes. It was utterly barbaric and calculated, the judge had said. However, she took an awful lot of other factors into account that were mitigating factors. The fact that this young man had been himself physically and sexually abused by stepfather, by a neighbour, in prison, because he'd gone on to commit offences himself when after the abuse had taken place in his childhood. All of these mitigating factors were taken into consideration, and including the fact that he is on the autistic spectrum, has autistic spectrum disorder. That was taken into account as well, and the fact he pleaded guilty. So the judge eventually sentenced him to life. This is what Sarah Munro QC said as she passed sentence.
The sentence I pass upon you is therefore one of life imprisonment, with a minimum term of 10 years and 8 months. From that term will be deducted the term you have spent on remand, which is 553 days. That deduction results in a term of 9 years and 63 days. Those numbers can be amended administratively if my calculation is incorrect. Once you have served that term, you will be entitled to apply for parole. However, you will not be released by the parole board unless they conclude that you no longer pose a risk to the public.
I don't think this will end the arguments over whether a sentence that's passed is too long, too short, whether that sentence is fair. But at least now this televising of the sentencing process will at least give people an insight into the very complex nature of the decision-making process.
White, our Home and Security Editor, thank you. Now, if you're one of the 60 million people living in the north of England, you'll have heard big pledges about transforming transport. Before today, Liz Truss commits to building Northern Powerhouse Rail in full if she becomes Prime Minister. But will it happen? I'm delighted to be joined now by the Greater Manchester Mayor, Andy Burnham. Andy, good to see you.
And you, Gloria.
I'm good, thank you. Let's give the government some credit. The Transport Secretary last month announced more than a trebling of investment for rail in the north to over $9 billion to upgrade rail routes. Why isn't that enough?
Because it doesn't deliver what they promised us, Gloria, at the last general election. The Tories stood on a clear promise to build a new line across the north of England, a crossrail for the north, if you like. And what they came back with was half a line. And I'm sorry, it's just not good enough. You know, you can't chop a city like Bradford, which you know well, completely out of the modern rail system. London doesn't get treated in that way. So why should we? We shouldn't have to choose between a good north-south line and a good east-west line. We deserve both if we're going to have modern infrastructure here that sets us up for the 21st century. So I'm saying to these two leadership candidates, and I've written to them today with the other mayors across the north, sit down with us when you win, if you win. Let's talk about the plans for railways in the north of England. Stick to your manifesto, deliver what you said you would, and we will support you.
Liz Truss, she looks likely to be our next Prime Minister, and she has committed to building Northern Powerhouse Rail in full. That must have been music to your ears.
It was when I heard it, and it sounds really encouraging, and I really hope she means it, because obviously I will work with any politician, Gloria, that is committed to investing in the north of England and levelling us up with the south. And if Liz means it, then that is genuinely a breakthrough, and it's good news. So I hope it's true. What we get, though, is the government calling half a line between Manchester and Leeds Northern Powerhouse Rail, and that isn't what we were promised. It's not what Boris Johnson promised when he stood in front of Stephenson's rocket when he became Prime Minister. It's not what George Osborne promised when he first floated the idea of a Northern Powerhouse almost 8 years ago in Manchester. So we've been waiting a long time. The Tories have made a lot of false promises to the north of England. If Liz means it, that is clearly good news.
Just want to talk to you about the row brewing in the Labour Party too. The Labour leader, Keir Starmer, made clear this week that the Labour Party in opposition needs to be the Labour Party in power, and a government wouldn't go on picket lines. With that in mind, he had no choice but to sack the frontbencher Sam Tarry, who defied him, did he?
Well, I don't know all the details, Gloria, because I was told it was for something said in an interview. Rather, I don't know, so I don't know what the reasons. But I just think Labour needs to be careful here. We can't ever be a party that undermines working people fighting to protect their incomes in a cost of living crisis. And if we're not careful, that's how we might come over. I think there's a real issue out there now for people in terms of wages and the energy bills that keep rising. People are going to have to fight to protect their incomes, and Labour should be supporting people to protect their incomes.
Some people in the Labour Party think the Labour Party would be doing much better if you were leading it.
Well, I'm here, and obviously I've tried twice, Gloria, as you know, and that didn't work. And I think I've found kind of my place, if you like, in terms of speaking for Greater Manchester and the North. And I'm kind of happy in what I'm doing here, and I kind of feel a bit more liberated being out of Westminster and the kind of system down there, and maybe hopefully with the other mayors adding something positive to the way things are. So no, people I'm afraid are stuck with me here because I'm going to serve a full second term in Greater Manchester. I want to do what I can to bring forward the prospect of a Labour government. What I'm worried about is we've got a leadership election here where both contenders are saying they're going to be Thatcherite, low tax, small state. Well, I'm sorry, but Mrs. Thatcher was not good for the north of England, and it may not please some of your viewers to hear that, But I think we were leveled down in the 1980s. In fact, I'm sure of it because I lived here and I saw it. So I'm not happy about hearing two candidates saying they're going to be Thatcherite and deregulatory and low tax, because it wasn't good for us in the past and it wouldn't be good for us in the future. So I want to see a change of government. That's why I want to see Labour win the next election. But I think it's got to step forward now and support working people in this cost of living crisis. And if it does, I think the country will be ready for a change.
And you mentioned the cost of living. It's obviously the biggest issue on everyone's minds. Centrica, which owns British Gas, they've announced that profits have surged five-fold today. What's your reaction to that? What should the government do about that, if anything? It's a private company.
Do you know what, Gloria? I had to read the figures twice to actually believe that those were the numbers. And Shell as well. It's not just Centrica. Shell, I think, recording record profits. They give us this thing, don't they, that when oil prices go up, they don't actually benefit because they just pass it on and there's no change. Yeah. Does anyone believe that? Does anyone in this country believe that, looking at these profits from Centrica and Shell today? I think we now need to hear from these two people who want to be our Prime Minister what they are going to do about this on day one. Are they going to let households be hit with bills that could get up to £500 a month? We've had some action, but it's nowhere near enough. So I want to hear much more from them on that very issue. What are they going to do to cap these excessive profits? What are they going to do to help people afford their bills? What are they going to do about the crisis in the National Health Service? That's also another issue that needs much more attention. So these are the things that are on my mind at the moment, Gloria. I don't think they've had a proper airing in this leadership election yet. Hope they will. But I also want the two candidates to tell me directly, will they sit down with me and other northern mayors and agree a better way forward for rail investment in the north of England? Because we haven't got what we were promised at the moment. So these are the issues I think need to be resolved as this leadership election progresses.
It's great to talk to you, Andy Burnham, and we will get that Real Me interview booked in with you soon. I'm in touch with your team, but I think that'll be fascinating. Take care, Andy Burnham. Thank you. Well, thank you for getting in touch today. Ron says, are the big energy companies taking advantage of the world situation and vastly overcharging the British consumers? Kathy emailed in, such a shame we can't have Andy Burnham as PM. He's steady, sensible and actually cares about the North. Marianne looks like she's a Liz fan. She says MPs should never underestimate the feelings of the public towards Rishi Sunak. They have an immense distrust of him. Liz, on the other hand, demonstrates loyalty and has a clear, proven track record of succeeding on any task she has taken on. Great to hear from you. And it's great to have you watching and listening to The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. Tom Harwood's going to be here tomorrow at noon. Up next, it's On the Money with the wonderful Liam Halligan. For now, it is time for your weather.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest forecast. Often cloudy across much of the UK through Thursday. There is the risk of some heavy showers, particularly across Dumfries and Galloway, but on the warm side. Looking at the pressure pattern, high pressure still dominates the weather across the UK, giving largely settled conditions. Wide isobars there indicating light winds too. However, there is quite a lot of cloud trapped underneath this high pressure, so fairly grey skies across the UK. The risk of a few showers across western areas. Some heavy showers possible across eastern parts of Northern Ireland, the Borders region, Dumfries and Galloway. So perhaps 15-20 mils of rain falling in short periods of time. So it's worth keeping an eye on the forecast and the heavy showers here. Temperature-wise, generally high teens to low 20s, 24 or 25 across the southeast. Through Thursday evening, a lot of cloud across the UK. Still some heavy downpours across northern parts of England, southern parts of Scotland into the early hours. Perhaps clouds stretching a little bit further south into the Pennines, 1 or 2 splashes of rain, but generally elsewhere dry. And temperature-wise, generally the mid to low teens. So overall, still another fairly mild night. So a warm start to Friday morning. More in the way of sunshine, though, across southern parts of England and Wales. The cloud bubbling up as the day goes on. Still fairly cloudy down the spine of the country. The risk of some rain at first, but this petering out later. 1 or 2 showers developing by the afternoon, but plenty of sunny spells around and lots of places staying dry. Temperatures reaching 26 or 27 towards the southeast, which is 81 in Fahrenheit. So feeling quite warm in that sunshine. Through the evening time, a change slowly on the way. Cloud and outbreaks of rain starting to move into Northern Ireland, western Scotland. Elsewhere, generally dry.